And welcome into the Fant Aussie Football Podcast. Podcast for all of your needs to win championships, all things related, entertain, and drop off syllables on the end of words. That's what we're all about here at the Fant Aussie Football Podcast. I'm your host, Ben, on Monday, the 14th of July, joined by one of my co-hosts, Keaney. How you doing?
Doing very well, mate. Very nice summary to start things up. And a bumper episode in store, Hod. You looking forward to it?
I certainly am, boys. Technology ticked. We got there in 7 days. Almost didn't get there tonight, but we pushed on and excited to be here, boys.
It's a much happier version of the Hodcast this week that we've got on our screens here, Keaney. So
good start. It
is a good start. And any questions fantasy related out there, reach out to the email address fantaussiefootball@gmail.com or on the socials, fantaussiefootball. That's FANTAUSSIE football. But yeah, so big podcast in this week that we've got installed. It's just nice to hear Hod's smooth vocals on the nice new microphone there, and he's pretty happy with himself, I think, now that he's got it. You had to go to JB Hi-Fi to troubleshoot a little bit of the microphone there, Hod?
I did. That is how dedicated I am to this great podcast. But yeah, it was always working. It's probably a little bit of user error, technologically noobed.
I was going to ask the question. I was just going to ask whether it was technical or user, but I'm glad you cleared it up. Very transparent you are.
Look, it may have just been a different port that I could have solved last week, but we're here, and that's the most important thing.
That's it, and we will get right into it, I think, now that we've got your vocals all ironed out with our power rankings. That's the power of love. And for anyone just tuning in for the first time, our power rankings are a little bit different. We basically take some mundane topics and we power rank what we deem to be a top three. This week, boys, we're going to go with we've gone food related the past couple. We're going to go just movies this week. Bit open-ended. Obviously, everyone's got their own very particular choices when it comes to movies, and there tends to be sort of the obvious selection out there. A lot of people go with the Shawshank Redemption or those sort of...
Spoiler.
Well, I'm just going like common ones that you'd hear. So we're not going to limit it to genres. We're just going to go basically our own category for why we deem it and our top three. And I'm going to start... You love an honourable mention. I've got honourable mentions at the end for me, Keaney, but I'm going to start with my... I don't know if I can even rank them. It's my third, but I don't, in no particular order. Anchorman features in my top three. Just purely for the fact that I've watched it many, many times, like many bound leather books, and it's one of the most quotable movies going around. So Anchorman, nice little insight into how my brain works. That's in my top three.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with that sort of start, Ben. Actually, I found this hard to start with, and then once I got rolling, I had too many movies that I'm excited by, but I'll start us off with my number three. It might be a touch on the niche side, but my number three is Rounders. For those who haven't seen it, is a poker movie with Matt Damon and a few other famous names. It is the best gambling/poker movie I think there is. So if you haven't seen it, it's one of the greats.
Better than 21?
Yes, better than 21.
Oh, big. It does sum you up pretty well.
Thank you.
Always playing the man. I love it. For my number three, I'm going to go a bit nostalgic. Back to the childhood, boys. This is when the movies were flowing a bit more than the modern day series. But Jurassic Park. Pioneering movie by the one and only Spielberg. I've got that right, haven't I?
Yeah, Spiel.
Yeah. Stephen.
One of its kind and one of the most successful franchises ever made. And
Can I ask what your favourite dinosaur is, Hod?
I think it'd have to be the Velociraptor.
Yeah.
They're conniving little things, aren't they?
Not a Stegosaurus for you?
Nah. Nah, it's got to be predatorial.
The Velociraptor is the great scene in the movie, I reckon. That's when they get going. In the kitchen.
It's a good one.
Get the heart rate pumping. Good nomination, Hod.
Back to me. Another classic that I've gone here for my number 2 pick. Back to the Future. Just a movie that if it's ever on, I'll happily sit down and watch. Yeah, it's got some questionable themes in there if you really break it down with going back in time and your mum trying to hit on you and all that sort of oddness that's thrown in there. But still a very funny movie and just kind of shows that they can throw questionable themes in there and it still holds up to this day. Back to the Future all the way.
Very good. And it is absolutely on the podium for best sequels in a movie too. Not many movies hit the sequel as well as Back to the Future. I'd throw in Home Alone there as well, boys, but that's for another day. My number 2 coming up is Good Will Hunting. Another Matt Damon movie. Geez, I love my Matt Damon. But I also love Robin Williams. I loved anything he was in. I thought he was hilarious. And that is a very, very good movie. There's some themes with my movies. First one was about poker. Second one was about maths. So we'll see where the number 1 lands.
Robin Williams, what a guy. I actually found myself watching Jumanji not long ago.
Great movie.
Nice.
Isn't it? Just.
So good. The Origi Dig.
Yeah.
That's right. None of the new stuff, although they are pretty funny with The Rock and Kevin Hart. But number 2 for me, boys, I love a top 2. It is, I spoke about one of the great directors of all time, and this is another one right here, Guy Ritchie with The Gentleman, in a bit more of a modern day movie in 2019, but that is, if you like mobs, you like crime, it's action-packed, and it goes for quite a while, and only the good movies can go for a long time. So that is top 2 for me.
Very nice.
Sorry, just on that, I don't know if it is based on it or not, but there's a current Netflix series called The Gentleman.
Yep.
And it is very, very good. It is very good.
So they're both Guy Ritchie. So one's the movie and the other's a TV show. I actually really rated the TV show. I didn't think they'd do a good job of creating a TV show out of the movie, but excellent job. And I'll keep the theme going here, Hod, because my number 1 is a Guy Ritchie movie as well, and one of the classics is Snatch. Just
2000.
Plenty, yeah. So 25 years ago that movie came out, and that is another one that you could easily just turn on, sit down and watch again and again and again. Lots of quotable moments, lots of Brad Pitt, hard to quote lines as a pikey, but yeah, no. I love a good thriller that sort of has the crescendo, and that movie does it absolutely in spades. So Snatch is my number 1.
Haven't seen it, but I'm sure it's very good. Maybe I should.
Jesus.
Yeah, I love when you do movie rankings and you say haven't seen it. People just lose their mind. But well, my number 1, many people may not have seen as well, but it's directed by the world famous. I don't know. I thought we were doing the director thing. Damien Chazelle. I don't know if he's world famous. No, he's done a bit of La La Land and Babylon and a few other things in recent times. But his best movie is a little movie called Whiplash, and it was probably the making of Miles Teller. It's got J.K. Simmons as well, about a drummer, and I think it's actually secretly a sports movie in the fact that it's one of the main themes is just how far you will go to be great. And I love this movie. If you haven't seen it, do yourself a favour.
It's a very good pick. Now, that's interesting that you've brought up the genre when it's a little bit of one or the other. Isn't there a famous movie that's possibly a Christmas movie that often gets talked about? They're always in the topic of conversation, but we've talked about directors a lot. I'm going to now point our attention to an actor, and he is an all-time great. And it is Denzel Washington. And if you can pick up what I'm putting down here, ladies and gentlemen, we are an NFL fantasy football show. And Remember the Titans has to be the greatest movie of all time. And it's inspiring. It's got everything we love about football. The cold winter mornings, the team camaraderie, it's just a classic. And this is why I love doing this show, because I've seen that movie too many times.
Left side.
Strong side.
Did you shed a tear when Bertier doesn't make it? Sorry to spoil.
Jesus, spoiler alert.
Bertier's mama. No, I don't know. I am one to shed a tear or two in movies. Marley and Me, don't go and watch that one. But no, I don't think I did for Remember the Titans.
Great nomination.
Yeah, I'm going to throw in some honourable mentions here. Obviously, you can pick up a theme with my choices here, but Dumb and Dumber has to feature as an honourable mention. That is just an all-time classic. Same with Superbad and Hot Rod, very similar vein. But I love a thriller, and Seven is up there. Is one of the best thrillers. One of the best lines from it of "What's in the barks." That's there. So throwing in heaps of honourable mentions here, Keaney.
I was going to say just throw out 4 honourable mentions, but
Yep.
I've probably got 2 just in terms of these are movies that I've watched a heap. And the 2 are, of course, Moneyball, one of the greats, Brad Pitt, and Happy Gilmore. Can't miss an Adam Sandler classic. So they're my 2 honourable mentions. Hod, what have you got for us?
Love that Happy Gilmore. Keaney can play the game of golf. Doesn't anymore, but when he does get out there, he's not bad with the old stick. My most watched, I thought that was the theme of our honourable mentions, and I have spent many a time on a Sunday hungover in my 20s watching The Good Luck Chuck, and that has some of the funniest lines that we were singing off the record before. Stu Clemensky, what a guy he is. But that is one of the funnier movies. It's a shocking movie, but it's one of the funnier movies of all time. So that rounds it out for me, boys.
Very nice. I think you're getting a bit of an insight
so
into
good.
the three of us with our movie choices there. Well done. I like the choices there. We'll come up with a power ranking for next week. We might do something. We even just floated the idea of potentially some TV show themes or something of that. We'll try and mix it up a bit so it's not always food related. But we'll get into the meat and veg of this podcast now. We're going to start to break down some divisions. And we'll kind of go a couple of divisions at a time. So let's jump straight into it by getting divisional.
Talk about legends horizontally. Let's get
Divisional.
I wanna get
Divisional. Let's get divisional. Let's talk division stuff.
body talk. Let me hear body talk.
And if that doesn't get you up and about, I don't know what would for a segment there. So,
I know a certain listener that will be chuckling away in his car listening to that.
yeah, there's certainly a couple who used to frequently ask for that drop. So hopefully that pleased them. And maybe for anyone who's heard that for the first time, you might be on board getting divisional. We're going to go with the AFC and NFC South. So just a really quick sort of summary of the teams in there, sort of where they're placed, some players of note in terms of where they're going currently in average draft position. And we'll kick it off with the AFC South on this side, and we'll go the Texans is the team we'll start off with. So currently favourite to win the division at 2-1 with an over-under line of 9.5 games is what they have got, which on a 10-win season last year, that's pretty much bang on. They're just expected to repeat, according to the bookies here. Just some notable players. Nico Collins is going 20th off the board. That's in Superflex rankings, which is, for anyone who isn't aware, the best way to play fantasy. So if you're getting into it for the first time, 100% recommend go Superflex. Basically, you have to start 2 QBs, which just creates a supply and demand issue, and it makes that QB position more important, which kind of reflects the NFL in a way. So Nico Collins, 20th off the board, which puts him at wide receiver 7. CJ Stroud, going to that QB position. He's being drafted at the 42nd spot, which is the 19th QB. And then Mixon just falling a little bit to 68th pick, running back 19. And I do think that Nick Chubb going there has possibly affected his stocks here. But just my takeaway from those three, yep, CJ Stroud's an interesting candidate at that position. Certainly a player that I'd happily draft, but Nico Collins, for me, just a bit too high at the 20th pick off the board. I kind of see that being his ceiling. It just hasn't done it enough for me to have the confidence to draft him at his ceiling. So, yeah, that's my summary of the Texans there. If you've got any other thoughts, otherwise, Keaney, on to the next team.
No, very good. And I think one thing we're going to do, we're not a gambling podcast, but gamble responsibly. But what we're going to do is we're going to have 100 Aussie dollars each to spend on each division. And we'll make our recommendations. Maybe we'll keep track of it and see who's the winner by the end of the year, just in terms of where we want to place our moolah on division bets or over-under bets. It's up to each person on this podcast. So we'll do that as well. I've got the Jags here coming in as the equal second favourite at 4-1. Now, they're an interesting team. Their over-under is 7.5 wins this year. They were extremely disappointing last year, as we know. They only notched up the 4 wins last year. So it's a big jump in terms of what they did last year versus what they're expected to do this year. So expected to go from 4 up to 8, basically. They were 8.5 last year. So they were one of those super disappointing teams that went all the way down. Now, can they regress back up again? It does happen a fair bit. Clearly, there's been a lot of change. There's been a change at head coach. There's been a change at GM. And they clearly have been pretty aggressive in free agency and through the draft, grabbing Travis Hunter at pick 2. So an interesting team in general. From a fantasy point of view, they have some stars. Now, they're not all at the top of the draft board, but they have some very interesting fantasy relevant players. First one is Brian Thomas Jr., who went nuts as a rookie, to be honest, had a super impressive year. He's at 24 off the board. So end of the second round, if we're playing in a 12-team league here, right at the end of the second round, you'll have a decision whether you want to pick up Brian Thomas or Trevor Lawrence is at ADP 41. Now, so for a super flex, that's actually pretty low down the pecking order. Most QBs sort of go pretty early, and he's QB 18 off the board. And I think that sort of speaks to how deep QBs are this year, because I think he could have a nice bounce back season potentially. And then possibly the most intriguing fantasy asset in all of fantasy this year will be Travis Hunter in terms of what he looks like offensively. Does he play much snaps defensively? What are they actually going to do with him? How are they going to use him? And sort of what that all looks like. So he's wide receiver 30 at the moment in redraft. So I think that feels about right, but I don't think he's a bad sort of dart throw either at that in that range. So he's coming off the board at 86. What's that, sort of 7th round-ish, 6th to 7th round in that range? I think the names dry up pretty quick around there. So he's an exciting type around that range. So in terms of sort of maybe some targets from this team, I think he's actually probably the most interesting at that ADP. Now, do I think he's absolutely going to have a great fantasy year? No, I'm not sure. But when you get around that range, you've got to have a few dart throws, and I think he's not a bad one. Do you boys have any other opinion on that?
I was just going to say, you'd almost say that if you are high on Travis Hunter being a solid wide receiver, then you should be high on Trevor Lawrence, I would have thought. So Brian Thomas, whether he can repeat what he did last year, but yeah, if he can have 2 solid wide receivers to throw to, I think that's a pretty good position that Trevor hasn't really had in his career.
And let's be honest, the other thing without butting in front of you there, Hod, was the Liam Cohen factor is pretty big, isn't it? I mean, he turned Baker Mayfield's career around.
The Baker Maker.
Loves it. What the listeners will know is Hod loves a little slip up. and he doesn't, he's like a dog with a bone. He doesn't let it go, and he just looks at you.
His face
that's
lights
fair
up.
enough. Baker Mayfield was QB 5 or something last year, and his whole career was rejuvenated. So can Liam Cohen do it again with a high pedigreed QB, just like Baker Mayfield was?
The Baker Maker. That is an enthralling setup by you, Keaney.
Well, I'm actually reading a children's book at the moment called The Biscuit Maker every night, so maybe there was some overlap there.
Overlap, we'll call it. But I think this is a fascinating team here for fantasy. Not going to break any more news than what you've talked about, but the fact that Trevor Lawrence is quarterback 18 which is what he was last year. And all they've done is add in the Baker Maker coach in Liam Cohen, who will probably boost his stock. And they've added Travis Hunter at pick 2. Now, this one's really fascinating because what wide receiver that went pick 2 would be then drafted at wide receiver 30? I think the range of outcomes is way too wide, but we just don't know. He might come in week 1 and play defense predominantly, dominate, and then you're going to be on this week to week. What is he going to do? So you could end up with an absolute steal in Hunter at 30, but we just don't know. But I do think Trevor Lawrence is the value out of these picks here for the Jags.
Well, you've got a theory, Ben, on Travis Hunter, don't you?
Why? I mean, I think he is going to play more wide receiver. I just think that is their greater need as a team. They've announced him as a corner and a wide receiver, but I just think that offense is where it's at, and they'll want to please Trevor because he's at an interesting point in his career, and I think giving him more weapons is. So I'm willing to take that gamble on Travis Hunter. If he's going around this mark when drafts are rolling around, I will be lining up to take him.
And you're right. Let's be honest. The wide receiver is the premium position in the draft, not really corner. You have to be pretty exceptional. And all they added was Diami Brown, lost Christian Kirk, so they haven't exactly added a plethora of wide receivers. Oh, and it was the guy from Buffalo. He was also cut as well, wasn't he? So they haven't added much. So you're probably right, Ben. Your theory being he'll play heaps of offense. So jump on board.
Well, they lost Evan Ingram too, so the targets are there. But we will not sit here and talk about the Jags for any longer. We will move to my Indianapolis Colts, and what is considered last year a huge failure. They still won 8 games, boys, and that was with a 7.5 over and under line, and it is the same again this year. They're sitting at 4-1, equal with the Jags, so tied second favourite, but third, however you like it. The Colts are an interesting one. We've got obviously the quarterback position is a huge unknown at the moment, but what is known is Jonathan Taylor, and he's the running back 8. He's finished number 1 before. He's finished in the top 10 4 out of 6 seasons, and the only 2 seasons he didn't was due to injury. So 34 overall in the 3rd round there. He's a pretty popular pick to be your first or second running back for your team. And I think you can be confident if Richardson is playing that dual threat. He proved it last year in 14 games. He finished RB9, missing 3 games. So he's played with Richardson before. He can do it at that dual threat behind the offensive line that they have is a top 5 unit. So I think JT is looking pretty good there. We've got Josh Downs, who we've talked about. We won't go too much into him again, but looking like a good value there. 117 overall, wide receiver 44. And then Michael Pittman, who has proven he can do it. He's not a popular pick, again, due to the quarterback situation, but screaming value at wide receiver 46. He's always hovered as a wide receiver 2 for his career, but sitting at 122 overall. So anything to jump in there, boys, about the Colts?
Your Colts. Yeah, I do enjoy when you've got a running QB with that running back combination, because I think it does open it up a little bit defensively for those running backs. And we know the quality of JT. So without going over what you said, I tend to agree. I think he's in for a large season, JT.
It is really just the injuries, the ankles he's had in consecutive seasons. He's still in a prime age. So I agree, Keaney, but Ben, we shall move on.
Yeah, we'll round it out with the lowest ranked team in this division to take it out. At 9-1, the Titans are rounding out this division with a 5.5 win over under line. They had 3 wins in the 2024 season, so fair jump that they've got to make to get to that 6-win mark. If you want to take them for the over, they've got to double their wins. However, they did have the number 1 overall pick and brought in Cam Ward, and it kind of highlights where they're at from a talent point, because he's instantly their best player drafted right now at the 84th overall pick, their 27th QB off the board. So I guess, you look at a player like that, and are you going to get a typical QB rookie who struggles week to week, or are you going to get potentially Jaden Daniels, who basically lit the world on fire and took them to the playoffs? So that they're hoping that they've clearly got the Jaden Daniels. I'm not as sold on Cam Ward. Had far more optimism for Jaden Daniels going into last season than I do Cam Ward into this season, Hod.
Well, who better to answer this Cam Ward than Keaney, who in our Dynasty League gave him up for Jared Goff, didn't you?
I did and then didn't. No.
Yeah.
I didn't end up picking him, but I think that's sort of telling in itself. Like I wasn't a bit like Ben. I wasn't super sold on his skill set that translates from a fantasy point of view. Now he might be a very good NFL QB. I just don't. I think he's actually might be his ceiling. Like if he can become like a Jared Goff type of QB, but he's obviously got some legs, but I don't think they're that significant that he's a difference maker in fantasy. So. But time will tell. Nothing about their roster from offensive side of it or defensive or their coach. Nothing excites me about the Titans.
No, not at all.
I can't have anything to do with them.
I've only reeled off their highest player drafted right now, and it's the 84th ADP, followed by Tony Pollard, 89th off the board, running back 27, and then Calvin Ridley, 90. So it kind of gives you a snapshot as to what people think of the Titans. But I think if there's anything to gauge out of this group here, I do like the upside of Calvin Ridley. We were sort of talking off air before we started the pod. They're going to be down. I mean, they're 9-1 to win the division, 5.5 wins. They're coming off a 3-win season. They're going to be behind in a lot of games. I think I was looking earlier today, so their QB ranking was 32nd overall, dead last year. So can only go up, some would say, from there with Cam Ward at the helm. So I think he's got a better person throwing the ball, Calvin Ridley. He averaged about 10 points per game last year. So he'll, I think, increase that, and there's just more junk time to throw the ball around. So basically games where they're down and they're just going to be throwing the ball just to pad the stats a little bit, and I think that's how Calvin Ridley's going to make a living for himself in the 2025 season.
Yeah, I think that's a good nomination. Not a sexy pick, that's for sure. But sometimes these players that just get high volume Hod are all you need. One from left field for me. He was all the hype last year, Tajay Spears, and the gap between him and Pollard now is significant. And I just think if you're going to take one or the other at ADP, I would be taking the cheaper version. I still think he's a part of this offense. He's got talent. I think you're getting him basically for free now. So have a swing at the back.
126 off the board, running back 40 versus running back 27. So
Yep.
You're right. It's probably, if you're going to try and shoot for upside, you go the player that you get many rounds later.
Where does the money lie, boys? That's what I want to know in this star-studded division.
Well, how are we doing it? Are we going just straight up on winning the division? I don't want to sort of pepper my Fant Aussie dollars. I take this stuff very seriously here.
Well, we've got 100 to spend, and I think we can. I think it's a flat bet. You can split your $100 up. It doesn't have to be 50-50 or 75-25. Put it on divisions. Put it on over-unders. The over-unders are, say, 2-1, and the divisions are the odds. So we'll see what happens.
I'll give you time to think, Ben. I'll kick us off here. I'm going $50, 50 large, we call it down here. I'm going to go the Texans at $2. I think that's still, there's going to be a lot of games shared in this division. I don't think anyone's going to take the world by storm. And the Texans, they underachieved last year after a phenomenal 2023. I think they will get a little bit better and probably hover around that over-under, and that will be enough to take it out. And my second 50, pineapple, is the Titans. Speaking of sharing wins, I think they're going to go over. I think they'll have 6 wins and just go over the 5.5 over and under. With the rookie quarterback, he might come in, have a little bit of extra juice because they had 0 last year. That was a pretty lackluster team. And, I like them to go over their 5.5 wins.
Very nice. I was actually looking at the Titans under as a potential
Ooh, I
pick
like
there.
it.
Which you know what, for the sake of just having an interesting thing to follow, let's go 50 smackaroonies on the Titans under 5.5. They had 3 wins last year. They brought in Cam Ward. I don't think he's going to make the difference of doubling their wins. So I'm going under there. And just for a bit of juice, I'm going to go $50 on the Colts to win the division. And unlike what you said before, I don't think Richardson takes the helm in this team. I do think Daniel Jones, and it's not going to be a pleasant watch. But you pointed out, rightfully so, like they had a shocking season last year and they had 8 wins. So I kind of can only see things getting a bit better for them. And this is a division that cannibalizes themselves. I'm even tempted to possibly look at the Texans under 9.5 there, but I'll go 50 under Titans 5.5 and 50 on the Colts to win at 4-1.
Oh, I like this division. And the AFC South is very much this division where it's
Every year.
it's a bit yucky. It's a bit like the NFC South, which we'll get to in a second. So there's plenty here for the punters, but I will follow a similar trend to Hod. I'm going to have 60 on the Texans. I think they're the clear-cut class of this group. But I'm also going to have the other 40 on a live underdog. I think the Jags can win this division. And if it's not the Texans, I think it's the Jags. So I'm going to have 40 on them. Liam Cohen, show me the way. And we'll see if we can't get their wins from 4 last year up to about 10 this year.
It's a big jump.
Big jump.
Big jump. Can be done. Can be done.
Great minds, Ben.
That's it. All right, we'll move on now to the NFC South. We're just going from one solid division to another here.
Speaking of Liam Cohen, his former
That's
team.
it. Kick us off,
The
Ken.
mighty Tampa Bay Bucks. Well, I think they're this is very unlike the NFC South, but I think they've won back-to-back division titles, the Bucks, for the last 2 years. So they have a little bit of a stranglehold on this division, although it's always pretty close. And I think there's a few up-and-coming teams in this division. They won the 10 games last year, so their over-under is set at 9.5, so basically the same line as last year. They are 2-1, so much like the Texans, 2-1 to win the division in the South. So from a fantasy point of view, we've got the emergence and the rise of Baker Mayfield at QB7, if you don't mind. Coming off the board at pick 9, again, this is Superflex, so to give you some context, 7 of the first 9 picks were QBs in consensus ranking, so they are very, very valuable in Superflex. But QB7 off the board is quite high. Bucky Irving, the revelation of last year, who really took over halfway through last year, running back 10 off the board, ADP 37. So end of the 3rd round. And then Mike Evans, the ever-reliable 1,000 yards, lock it in. He's wide receiver 18. So, look, last year they were a offensive force under an offensive mind in Liam Cohen. So that's the biggest query for mine, and something you've probably got to weigh up. From my point of view, boys, I don't know what you guys think, but I would be probably fading a few of these prices. I think they're a bit too rich for my blood. I can't have Baker Mayfield at QB7. Like, I know he had a huge year last year, but is he really going to do that again? Mike Evans has got to fall off at some point. I know they've drafted they've drafted really Godwin's replacement, and they've got some offensive weapons. I just don't know. It's a high bar that they set last year, and these prices are reflecting what they did last year, so they would need to repeat to get your value back, and I just don't really like it.
Yeah, I agree. I'd actually fade Bucky Irving there as well as the RB10 off the board. He had an amazing rookie season, finished RB14, I think it was, half-point PPR. So you're basically drafting him at his absolute ceiling, and I want a bit more of a sample size for the players I'm drafting that high up. So, it's a very good point. Baker Mayfield sort of outperformed anyone's expectations last year. Had a magnificent season, but then to lose their coach, it's Yeah, I know. Keaney, I can see on your face me stuffing up words there, and Hod's grinning as well. What have you got to share, Hod?
He had a good seven.
I was just going to comment on like how much do we read into the coaching moves? We had Cohen move where it seems to be down on the Bucks and high on the Jags now. And I think once we get to the North divisions, we're going to have a similar story to Detroit. Star-studded, talent-filled team. But how much do we believe in the Ben Johnson vacation? Or I don't know if he's out of vacation or he's just moved. But yeah, I think it'll be a similar story to this. They are really high. I didn't actually realise.
Yeah.
I'm still taking Mike Evans where he is until he falls off. He's unreal.
Yep.
Good player to watch.
Absolutely. We'll move on to the Falcons now, who are the second ranked team and not far behind the Bucks there. They're paying $3.20 to win the division, with an over-under of 7.5 wins, coming off an 8-win season in 2024. So once again, there's not a lot of variety here in the NFC South. They're basically putting the line at where these teams finished last year. And just some notable players, probably the most notable player in all of these teams here, Bijan Robinson, coming the 8th player off the board, running back 1. It's fair to say that's, I spoke about drafting players at their ceiling, and when you're drafting someone 8th overall, that's absolutely drafting their potential ceiling, and I do think Bijan has the potential to back that up. There's a pretty notorious stat out there of running backs not being able to repeat running back 1 seasons. Saquon Barkley had the running back 1 season last year, so regression is definitely on the cards for him, and I think Bijan steps up and fills that running back 1 spot. 31st player off the board, or wide receiver 9, is Drake London, and then the 69th player off the board, bit of a wild card this one, QB 24, Michael Penix. So we don't really know what we're getting in Michael Penix, a very, very, very small sample size with what happened last year with the Kirk Cousins massive free agency signing, then the shock draft pick of Penix, and then he sort of made his way onto the roster partway through the season, Hod.
Well, it's when you have these high rankings in the skill positions, it's hard to look past the quarterback. But that's 24. We only got a small sample size of him last year. Doesn't offer much on the ground, if anything. So he needs to put up a Baker-like season, which is 4,000 yards, 30, 35 plus touchdowns to turn the profits in at the quarterback position, especially in Superflex. So I'm really intrigued to see how Penix goes this year. And after all, he has put Kirk to the bench, who obviously coming off the Achilles wasn't great, but still one of the had a pretty impressive career over the last decade. So it's an exciting offense, this one, Keaney.
And you got to remember that this team, granted it was with Kirk Cousins, but this team was at 9.5 to start last year. So they certainly have some talent on their roster. But yeah, as you said, Penix will be the deciding factor. I find the price of Drake London to be a touch intriguing at wide receiver 9. Now, I know he had a pretty good year last year, had a very good year last year, but he was, as I look at his sort of game log, he was boosted by a massive Week 18 result where he scored 36 points. Now, you take that away, I know you can play this game till you
take
blue in the face,
his best score away, and he wasn't as good.
No, that's a good point. He wasn't. But he could do that for every player. I just think over the journey, are we sure that Drake London with Michael Penix is wide receiver 9? I would take some other options in that range of the draft.
At the team we just reviewed before, and you get Mike Evans at wide receiver 18. I'd prefer him. He's a player who's done it again and again and again, versus Drake London, who had a great Week 18. I think I looked at his stats before. He's was wide receiver 1 on the season 3 times, which is a top 12 finish at his position. The rest he sort of hovers, and it's not even like he just misses on wide receiver 1. He was like wide receiver 3, 4, sometimes 5. So he had some pretty ordinary finishes on the season in weeks. But I'm also looking here, a lot of these players, their ADP is just based off how they finished the 2025 season. So Penix had 24.98 in his final game. He finishes the QB7, 38 attempts, 21 completions, 312 yards. Like, he's had an awesome week 18, but it's also week 18. Like, do you really read in too much to when teams are out of the playoffs and just sort of doing a lot of junk time? Yeah, I think it's a bit rich for the London Penix duo there, and I'm a bit dubious, Hod.
I believe, might be wrong here, but I believe that week 18 was against this team that I'm about to talk about, who had an awful defense last year. But I think it might be an exciting team to watch this year in the Carolina Panthers. They are sitting currently third favourite for the division with coming off 5 wins last year. And 6.5 wins is the projection for this year. So I see a few eyes widening at the moment. Might be some smackaroonies being laid there. But we're going to talk about Bryce Young. We have to. He came out very, very poorly last year, struggled mightily, and then put a pretty solid finish to the year, I'd say, which has maybe brought him back to QB 23, which is ADP 63 overall in Superflex. And a reminder, please be playing Superflex if you can. And we'll probably come back to him, but Chuba Hubbard is a darling of fantasy now. Underdog story last year, came from nowhere with the injury to Jonathan Brooks, that's the one. I should know him. He's on my team. But yeah, he took over and really just didn't give the job to anyone. He finished a really good season and now is RB 17 overall, 64. So they're going back-to-back ADP, Bryce Young and Chuba. And lastly is the very exciting, highly invested rookie wide receiver, Tet McMillan, at wide receiver 29 without ever playing a snap. Now, he was a pretty high pick here, boys. I'm going to pass it on here to see who you talk about out of Bryce and Tet. Either one of you jump in.
What if I want to talk about Chuba?
No way. You can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, you said he had a good season. He finished RB 15 on the season. He's been drafted 17. So you're looking at repeat for him. I like the upside of Bryce Young. He did finish really strong. He had his bye week last year, and I think the last sort of 8 games of the season floated around that QB1 mark for majority of them. He was even, I saw a video today of the no-look touchdown celebration that he was throwing. So his confidence was up and about towards the end of the season. And I'd like to think that to start the season the way he did and to finish the way he did, I think that's the way you want to see young QBs playing, not the other way around. So I think he's going to start the season up and about, and he's got a nice little target in Tet McMillan Keaney to throw to.
He does. And since we've been discussing movies in our power ranking segment tonight, for all those Gwyneth Paltrow fans, a real sliding doors moment for Bryce Young last year with him getting benched and then old Andy Dalton getting in a car crash, and since then he sort of took over and was unbelievable. So just funny how these things can happen. Yeah, Tet's exciting. I think I don't need to say too much more. Wide receiver 29 is, I think, a reasonable price for a rookie wide receiver taken so early. I think pick 8 in the draft, and those first-year wide receivers can really help you in fantasy in year one.
To bring it back to the AFC South, Travis Hunter's wide receiver 30. So who do we like the upside of more, Tet or Travis Hunter?
Well, Tet doesn't have Brian Thomas lining up next to him. So I would probably lean on to Tet at this stage.
That's a very interesting one because you've got capacity for targets versus a real difference in quarterback. Well, we could argue not, but I still think a proven gunslinger, whereas Bryce probably, even in his limited and improved season, probably wasn't an airing it out a heap. So that is a very, very riveting comparison between those two rookie wide receivers for this year. But I'm really excited about this next one. I gave you the Colts. Now, how much are the Saints going to shuck?
Well, they will Tyler shuck more than you've ever seen. And I'm telling you, their over-under is 4.5. It was 5.5. I think it was actually 6.5, and then Derek Carr retired, and then it went to 5.5. Now it's 4.5. The punters can't get enough of betting this under.
Well, it was 6.5, and you put your mortgage on it under. And it's a big house, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, so they're 12-1 to win the division. That is unders. Don't take 12-1. They should be 100-1. They won 5 games last year and have downgraded at QB. I don't know how they're 4.5, to be honest. And I think if you look throughout most years, the worst teams in the NFL have either 2 or 3 wins. I think this team could be one of those this year. I just look at their roster and there's nothing exciting on either side of the ball. I said that about the Titans. At least the Titans have got a bit of talent. The Saints, my Saints, I'm not looking forward to waking up at 2 a.m. and watching this motley crew run around. But anyway, let's get into some fantasy talk. And if there is actually any fantasy relevant Saints out there, well, this guy's been relevant for the better part of 6 years and he's been a star. Alvin Kamara, running back 16 off the board. Now, he's an interesting player. If you actually think about it, he doesn't rely on game script because he'll get his targets. We've got a rookie QB in there. Running back 16, he'll get a hell of a lot of work, I would think. I don't think there's a heap behind him. The second player off the board for the Saints, this is telling you how well they're going, Chris Olave, who's got some issues with his concussion. There's some red flags in him and clearly a bit of a risk, but wide receiver 31 off the board. And then Rashid Shaheed, the third most relevant fantasy player for the New Orleans Saints at wide receiver 51. If that doesn't sum it up, then nothing else will. The great Tyler Shuck is, I think, at pick 160 or something like that. So you can get the starting QB of the Saints if you want in the 14th round, if that tickles your fancy.
It does not.
Well, now what about the new head coach here, Keaney? Kellen Moore is a good-looking man. And
Striking resemblance to someone of his
he's
kind.
an offensive mastermind. What do you think he has in store for this young offense? These are the ones that can surprise. They can be more productive because of the unknown factor. Think Houston, first season with CJ Stroud. So I'm not saying it's going to be to that level with Tyler, but just the unknown factor, new coach, new game plan. I'm interested to see this team and you support them because you sound very, very optimistic.
Yeah, I'm pretty pessimistic. I think, look, with that said, Dennis Allen was a joke. Oh, sorry, not a joke, but he's never had a good record in the NFL as a head coach, and he still doesn't. And I don't think Darren Rizzi, the Rizmeister, was much chop as the backup. So clearly an upgrade from a coaching point of view. And he is quite a talented, young, attractive mind in the NFL, Hod. For those that are listening that don't understand, Hod, our great man Hod on the podcast, looks exactly like Kellen Moore. So if you just Google Kellen Moore, that's what's coming through your airwaves.
This talk has been going. This talk with Hod's been going on since he was a Boise State quarterback.
Yeah,
he's hated the comparison ever since. And then the best thing Kellen Moore did was become a relevant coach in the NFL. So he's just still around for us to see. So
yeah, look, in terms of your question or your point, it's a real contrarian play. If you're interested, and sometimes that can be profitable in fantasy, where you actually go, okay, well, what if the Saints are actually half decent? I can actually profit out of that situation. The good thing is you don't have to spend a valuable pick to grab someone from the Saints if you do want to back in Kellen Moore and the offense. I just don't have high hopes for it. So that's just my opinion at this stage.
I'll tell you what isn't a contrarian pick, and that's Alvin Kamara. I think he was sneaky good last year, hasn't aged one bit, and I think it doesn't matter how the offense is going. he will be peppered with targets and given a lot of opportunities, and that's what produces in fantasy football, Ben.
You said not a lot behind Alvin Kamara. Kendre Miller, someone who people thought could be relevant last year, but Dennis Allen didn't like him, didn't want to borrow him. So you talk about a new coach coming in, wants to... I mean, any good coach will have a committee in some way, shape or form. So could have some touches taken away from him there. I do think that Kendre Miller could have some form of relevance, but more from just a snap percentage share.
Yeah, potentially. Look, he's been injured for the better part of 2 years. So I think that was Dennis Allen's frustrations with Kendre. It wasn't that he couldn't play, it's just that he was injured. And there was a little bit of a query on his work ethic from what I hear. So I don't think the whole coaching staff was on board. But you're right, there is a new coaching staff in the building, so who knows. But I don't see a lot of competition for Alvin this year.
Well, with competition in mind here, 100 Fant Aussie dollars to be spent on the infamous NFC South. Who wants to kick us off?
I'll start. Whilst I was very confident in the under 4.5, I'm not going to touch the Saints. I'm not going there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have 50 on the lock over of the year, the Carolina Panthers, over 6.5 wins. 50 on that, and then I'm just going to double down and have 50 on them to win the Division 2 at 5-1. Juicy McJuicy.
Does he play for
Juicy.
them? Is he a new player for the Panthers, is he?
Yes.
Lines up at cornerback.
No, he's a tight end.
He's a tight end, Juicy McJuicy. Hod, what have you
Of
got?
course he is. That's an enthralling pick by you there, Keaney. Now, I am going to use your advice and swoop in and put 50 large on the Saints under. I'm going to get my money back so that I have a free bet right now, and I'm going to put it on the Falconians, the Shane Falconians, another good movie that we didn't talk about, The Replacements, and $3.20. I'm going to triple my money when they take this division. I think what we don't talk about on fantasy is the defense, and I do like their additions there, especially in the pass rush. Might see a big jump and improvement, and I like the coach. Raheem goes all right. So there's my pick.
Nice.
Ben.
You're right, we don't talk about defense and really at all on this, and for a very good reason. If you play in a league that has defense, get rid of it. It's a waste of time.
Kickers and defense.
Kickers and defense. Too much variance. Not enough excitement. Can absolutely ruin your week because they just happen to score a touchdown or have some sort of fumble recovery, Keaney.
Also, it's the opportunity cost of not being able to start another actual offensive player. That's the whole purpose of fantasy. Put as many good players on the field at once. You don't want to cheer for a defense.
So you've heard it here first. Superflex all the way. No defenses, no kickers. Half-point PPR. I mean, if you're starting a league up or you want to add a bit of spice or variety to your leagues, make those changes. You won't regret it. I'm going to go nice and simple on this, and you said you wouldn't touch it. Hod, you did touch it. I'm going all 100 on the Saints under 4.5. You hit the nail on the head. The worst teams in the NFL have about 2 or 3 wins, and they are the worst team in the NFL. There's no two ways about it. They suck. They had 5 wins last year. They're going to Tyler Shuck as their QB. It's not going to be pretty for them. It is going to be a bloodbath. I do think the Bucks win that division, but just for the sake of it's $2, I think the more sure bet is them under 4.5 wins. Hod.
I think what sliding door we're opening here is Keaney might be very interested in college football, and in particular Texas
Bit of Arch.
Longhorns, because he's still undecided if he's coming out in the draft. And I think
His grandpa is a Saints legend.
there is a bit of Norlands in the Manning family, but if he comes out and starts dominating for Texas this year, then that will likely put him in a better position to be the number 1 pick for next year. And if this comes true, that could be your Saints, Keaney. That would be pretty handy, I think.
Yeah, it probably would be. And for those that aren't aware, there's also you can also play in Devi leagues, which none of us actually do that. But how intense would that be, Hod, to follow them through college, actually basically playing fantasy through college? Like that might be something we get to one day. What do you reckon?
Oh, it's a talented room, this. I think
Yeah.
we could absolutely take our talents to the college nation. But yeah,
Very
there we go.
And that is the AFC and NFC South there. Plenty to take away from. Hopefully you have taken some notes while you've been listening. But I'm going to now kick over to a mailbag segment. And we had someone write in this week, Keaney. So why don't you read out the proposal, or the mailbag, which I
Yep.
believe has like a trade proposal in there?
Yep, a very good email. And for any other email questions or just general thoughts, if you want to talk about power rankings or suggest other power rankings, fantaussiefootball@gmail.com. Jump into there. We will most definitely read it and probably add it to the show, to be fair. This one I got from our great friend Todd. I don't actually know who Todd is, but thanks for writing in, Todd. Hi, Chris. First time, long time. Really like the pod. I'm in a 12-team Superflex tight end premium league. So just let me go through that one more time. Half point PPR, I'm guessing. 12-team Superflex and tight end premium. So that's relevant. And I've been offered a trade and wanted to get your thoughts on if I should do it. Now, it is Quinshon Judkins and a 2026 third. Clearly, we're talking in Dynasty here. So Quinshon Judkins and a 2026 third for Derrick Henry. Would love any help I can get and keep up the great works. Best regards, Todd. So thank you, Todd, for writing in. And boys, a topical
Juicy.
trade, this one, because clearly it looks to me like a bit of a contender move versus a rebuild. But with the news on Judkins in recent times, what are we suggesting here from a hold him or maybe sell him off low right now?
Can I clarify, is Todd getting Judkins in the third here?
Yes, Todd is.
Okay. So makes sense if he's rebuilding. Obviously, running backs and someone to Derrick Henry's caliber, he's getting on. And for the last probably 4 years, I think, in the Dynasty community, a lot of people have been jumping off him. But he will give you a very good season this year. I guess it's just about how much do you expect Judkins to play? I don't know. It's obviously very early days, so do you jump in early and get off the Judkins bandwagon before any more developments come out in his story? It's a bit of a mixed bag in the NFL for this. You've got Zeke, who had that hanging over his head for a couple of seasons, missed 6 games, I believe it was, but it was about 2 years down the track after the news developed. And then you've got, Ray Rice is another example where it was looking to go down the path of Zeke, and then footage came out, and then he was instantly gone and never played another snap again. So if I'm Todd, I think it doesn't really serve me any purpose to have Derrick Henry if I'm rebuilding, so I'd probably lean to that trade.
No, but I would agree. But if I'm Todd also, I'd be looking at different ways to trade Derrick Henry. I don't think we need to be trading Derrick Henry I don't know if you've initiated this trade or you're trying to sell Derrick Henry, but I don't think we need to be selling him for a risky asset and
Yeah,
a
that's true.
2026 third. Can you look somewhere in the wide receiver market where the assets are a little bit more stable? Can you find a different running back, a younger running back that is a little bit more stable than what Judkins is currently? So I don't mind the idea of moving Henry on as a rebuilding team, but I would probably go down a different path.
Yeah, it's valid points. But culture is king at Cleveland, isn't it? It's just fitting that this has happened. But regardless of what happens with him, I have to put this hat on because I've seen the crystal ball here. But there also wasn't the runaway role for Judkins coming into this. So I totally agree with getting rid of Derrick Henry for this particular trade. I would absolutely go for a bit more. And it sounds like a knee-jerk reaction to what we don't know yet, but there was already risk in it. So yeah, this one's we're not going to talk about what it is or how long it's going to be, but it is. I think you could get a bit more for Derrick Henry, as you would know, Ben. He is defying all age, and so the top running backs typically do when they're superstars like him.
I think, obviously, the three of us do Dynasty, and I've got Derrick Henry on my roster, but running backs are really, really hard to sell, especially someone like Derrick Henry, because if I'm going to sell him, I want something in returns for what I'm going to get out of him this season. Otherwise, I just hold him. He's essentially 1 or 2 years. Well, he signed a 2-year contract, so let's say 2 years he's got left in him before the wheels well and truly fall off. But he is a bit of a specimen, so who knows? I just don't think people are willing to pay up for older running backs in Dynasty unless they're in a position where they don't really care. They've won maybe back-to-back titles and they just want to top up and sell some assets. So I wouldn't, personally, as the Derrick Henry owner, I wouldn't sell for Judkins in a third. I'd want something a bit less volatile if I'm going to be getting rid of him. But I also just don't think you get an awful lot in return.
Yeah, and I would also just throw out, you don't need to trade him before the season starts. And that, opinions might vary on that, but I don't know if you need to rush to trade Derrick Henry. Wait till there's contenders emerging that can do with his services.
Yeah, good point.
And you have a bit more of an idea of what's out there. Maybe like there's an injury to a young up-and-coming wide receiver that you really like, and you're willing to be patient with that player. So that's a better fit for your roster. So I think you've just got to take all those sort of factors into account. I know it's exciting to trade at this time of year, but sometimes just taking a breath and just letting it all play out can be the right result too.
Well said.
And that brings us to the end of another Fant Aussie Football podcast episode there. Thanks to Todd for writing in. Plenty more of that is what it's going to make for some juicy discussions here. Hopefully you've got something out of our divisional breakdowns. We'll certainly be covering off on all the other divisions in the coming weeks there, Keaney.
We will, and as I said, if you've got any queries, any comments, any power ranking thoughts, jump into fantaussiefootball@gmail.com. Next week, we will be reviewing the AFC and NFC North, so looking forward to that one.
Ooh, how good. That is a juicy McJuicy.
Some good teams in those divisions.
Absolutely. Fantasy points galore. But how good was that from Todd? That's what we want to see every week, the mailbag rolling in. He sounds like an intelligent gentleman for sure. So keep up the mailbag, ladies and gentlemen. It will send us to places to keep bringing you this Aussie flavour content that will help you win leagues.
Spot on there, Hod. Helping you win your leagues, that's what we're all about. So please reach out, especially if you've been going through a drought. We haven't probably announced this, but there's, what do we, Hod? 5 championships between the three of us on this podcast.
And a few seconds we left out, which we deliberately did.
A lot of seconds.
Takes a bit to get there.
Yeah, way too many times that I finished runner-up. But Keaney, you certainly are someone that's going to be keen to take that advice on board so that you can win yourself a title. I might be rubbing this in just a little bit too much, but reach out with all your fantasy-related questions. We're looking forward to winning people plenty of leagues this year. And don't forget to reach out on fantaussiefootball@gmail.com and on Instagram. Thanks for listening.